Yay!
I told you that's what I was going to do. Welcome, everyone, to the 4th episode of For Fork's Sake Live. We're so happy to be here, and to you out there. Tonight's episode topic is body autonomy and body policing. And we are joined with some fabulous ladies. I'm going to start. I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to show off what I'm having for dinner. My name is Danny Bryant. I'm in Chicago, and I am the founder of Knife and Fork, and we are a theater company that is committed to retelling, reshaping the way stories are told about food and the body. And for dinner, I'm having a dinner that looks like it's made for a toddler. It's grapes and chips and a tiny little frozen pizza, except the frozen pizza is Indian flavored. It's one of the cashy ones, and I can't wait to eat it. Who's next?
So I'm Dawn, or Sam Alden, and I'm in LA right now. And I was so thrilled to start this with Danny because I've had this idea in my head for a long time of doing some sort of theater project about women in food. And when I saw Danny's theater company on the interwebs, I said, that's the gal. So very excited to be doing this. Number 4. And for my dinner tonight, I have some fabulous, this is a roasted eggplant with feta and tomato and oregano, slab of polenta with it, and then I tried this zucchini dish that's made with anchovies, and it was interesting. Can't really taste the anchovies, but I put in, I think, 4 times the garlic the recipe called for, so you can really taste the garlic.
Awesome.
That I'm eating. And this is my fabulous new This Is What a Feminist Looks Like t-shirt.
I think it's amazing.
I love it.
Who's next?
I'll go. I'm Morgan Manassa. I'm an actress and an artist in Chicago, and I know Sam from Babes with Blades, where I'm an ensemble member. So I do the sword fighting and other fun things. And I'm a vegetarian, so I'm eating veggie chili with cornbread that my man friend made. And there's cornbread under there. I like to put it in the middle of it. Oh, there's a little bit. Yeah. I'm going to eat the shit out of this. And that's all I have to say.
Awesome. Kat, how about you?
Kia ora, I'm Kat Paze, and I'm a faculty member in Human Development at Massey University in Palmerston North, New Zealand. I'm also a fat studies researcher and quite active in the fatosphere with the blog and a podcast and all that great kind of stuff. It is not dinner time here for me, so I'm enjoying a frozen Coke from McDonald's, which is the closest thing you can get to a Coke Slurpee here in New Zealand, where there are no 7-Elevens.
Delicious. Well, I'm just so happy that you guys are all here. So let's jump in. I would love to just hear from you guys how you define body autonomy and what kind of that word means to you personally in terms of your own experience as a woman in the world.
Go, Morgan, go!
I don't know! Well, I guess just finding a way to be comfortable in your own skin, though, however it is, which, you know, it's a lifelong struggle. And just not letting other people tell you how you should be, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, oh, you're shaped like a pear, so you should wear these clothes. Or, you know, whatever kind of bullshit they want to throw at you. So I don't know. That's my short answer.
I like it. For me, it means I feel like I went through a very large part of my life trying to, I don't know, make my body the way other people wanted it to be. And so I've now finally embraced kind of just doing whatever I want and trying to come to terms with that. And also really being activated anytime I feel like someone is trying to impose an opinion or a value or a concern about what I'm doing. and kind of owning and feeling like I have the ability to speak up for that is part of me kind of embracing my own autonomy in the world.
Very cool.
I think the issue of body autonomy, it's such an interesting one to speak about, not only as a fat person but also as a woman, or not only as a woman but I guess also as a fat person, just because in both of those roles historically other people have been trying to take control over what I can do and what decisions I'm allowed to make in regards to my own body, whether it's about my physical health, my sexual health, the way that I choose to kind of engage my body in performance, what I choose to put on my body. So it's such an interesting thing to think about what we mean when we talk about autonomy in bodies, especially for women's bodies, and especially for fat women's bodies. Mm-hmm. I'm always interested because with the kind of growing rhetoric in the larger community around issues of fat acceptance and fat activism, we're seeing more and more kind of the, oh sure, we shouldn't discriminate against people who are plus size, and plus size people have a right to, I don't know, wear fat bikinis if they want to, and that kind of stuff. But there's still almost always kind of a bar put on it. So it's, kind of this idea of, oh sure, we want everyone to be comfortable and happy in their bodies, but only to a certain point. Once you hit this weight or once you hit this size, then we want to strip that autonomy back from you because now you've crossed a line and now you're a problem. So I guess for me, when I try to think about what does body autonomy mean, it means being able to be agentic in the choices and decisions I make with my own body, mm-hmm. without having those imposed upon me by others, whether it's from the state, from the media, from family and friends, doctors, whoever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that there's a huge collision of personal and political when it comes to body autonomy and body politics. That it's not something that you can keep entirely in one of those categories, because as women historically, we have constantly had our bodies have been sort of the space of public battles about what we should and should not be allowed to do with our own bodies, and what our responsibility is to society with our bodies, whether we're supposed to cover them up a certain amount or reveal them a certain amount according to the needs and wants of those around us. So it becomes this, and then of course, the issue of abortion is really a body autonomy issue. Are we allowed to decide what goes on with our own bodies? Or is that in the hands of a higher power? Do we owe a higher power the decision of how we can control our own bodies? So it touches a huge amount of things, and it is an extremely complicated issue. But it has these extremely personal ramifications because, whether or not what kind of health care I'm allowed to get depends on how other people view the way that I treat my own body and the things that I do with my own body, and my status in society is determined by how other people judge my body and what I have chosen to do with it. Whether I've chosen to let my hair go gray or cover up the gray, that other people will judge me on that choice, but it's my hair. So it's a huge, huge topic.
Mm-hmm. And and what's connected to the whole title of the talk today is body autonomy and body policing. So, right, it's like, I really would love to dig in, and I think this would actually be a great show because we're a smaller group, to also really explore the personal of those flips and the policing of I think it's one of those subjects that, like you just mentioned, Dawn, is so broad and really could be talked about. We could talk about hair autonomy, and we could talk about body autonomy, and we could talk about sexual autonomy, and we could just go on forever.
Yeah, yeah. So what are instances that we have personally experienced body policing? When have you been body policed?
Most of my body policing has I like every now and then someone will be like, well, I don't know why you would choose to wear that skirt because it makes you look bigger than you are. It's like, because that's a bad thing. I don't know why. But I found like most of my body policing, and I realized this today, is people not understanding why I don't want to have my own babies, and then doing the whole, your body's built for it, and it's the best thing you'll ever do, and it's like, maybe, but I don't want to do that, and these little ovaries and everything are none of your business, so,
right.
Like, my hand can also form a fist naturally, but that doesn't mean I'm going to go punch people in the face every day, So, that's my main thing, and then I keep finding just, like, little things. I feel pretty fortunate that not a lot of people actually bother me about my weight. I think it hinders me in certain areas and all that, but it's really no one in my life makes it a big deal because it's not. And they know that it's not for me. And the only thing is when I do call myself fat, because I have fat on me, people are like, no, you're not fat. No. I was like, well, I'm not skinny. I'm not a size 10. I'm not, this or that. And it's not a bad thing by any means. Like, it's just a word. Like, I have brown hair. No, you don't have brown hair. Like, you're a brunette. Like, oh, whatever. It's the same thing. So I don't know why I don't know why I have to, like, defend the use of a word that I use on myself in a, what I think is not negative way,
Right. I do remember also you posting, oh God, this was like 6 months ago or something. I remember you posting on Facebook about how a waiter had advised you what you should order in a restaurant. You had chosen something and the waiter was like, no, honey, you don't want that.
The samosa guy. I was so mad because I had lunch and I was still hungry. So I went to like a little food court nearby and I ordered like a samosa. No big deal. And the guy behind the counter was like, oh, are you on a diet? Like, no. It's like, well, you're not ordering lunch. You're just ordering a side. I thought you might be on a diet. I'm like, no. I had lunch and I'm still hungry. So I'm giving you my money to give me food. And then he turned it into, oh, are you going out drinking later? Like, what? Because it was a Friday night. It was like, you're going out drinking with your girlfriends later, right? So you're saving calories. I'm like, I ain't saving calories for nothing. I'm going to go eat and drink whatever I want because give me my samosa and I'm leaving. And then I should have left. And I was kicking myself because I left giving him money for this samosa, which was delicious, to be fair.
Don't blame the samosa.
I'm not blaming it, but I was sitting there eating it, feeling kind of bad about myself that I was eating this thing that would normally bring me such joy. But I still ate it, and it was still delicious, and I don't patronize that place anymore. But yeah, it made me really mad.
I connect to that because I feel as well that if I ever feel policed, it's by people I don't know. It's strangers who I feel I've done a pretty good job in my own community to establish my identity around body autonomy and that it's something I'm really passionate about. But yeah, it's still interactions with strangers. I decided I'm going to do my first 5K, but not because I want to lose weight or because I'm on a diet. Really, it's because I want to be in the color run, which is where they throw paint at you, and I think that sounds so fun, and that's why I'm training, so I can get paint thrown at me. But I went to buy last night to buy running shoes, and it was like the woman, she reached out and grabbed my hand. It was like, this is gonna be so good for you. I'm so happy you're doing this. I was like, I'm just okay. I'm just want to be covered in paint. Like, yes, and running will be fun and it'll make me feel good, but I'm not doing it because the typical reasons that people
Right.
running for.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I totally identify with that of feeling like it comes from the samosa guy or the woman selling me running shoes as opposed to people close to me anymore.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Speaking of
I think
5G,
that-
really quick. Oh. No, you go. You're more important, Kat. By the way, you are a fitting image of one of my best friends. Like, when your face popped up, I was like, oh my god, what is Haley doing on the screen? So anyway.
Nice.
That's all I have.
Me and Haley, we're close.
Yeah? I'm going to try to watch this. You should keep break out. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I could spend, honestly, days talking about ways that my body has been policed as a fat woman, both by strangers, including random people in the grocery store commenting on what's in my cart, to people that I have minimal interactions with, healthcare providers, teachers, coworkers, to friends and family. So I, like many people, grew up around, what I now know to identify as like the food police. So the comments that are often made around the family, home or dinner table about, oh, are you really going to eat that? Or didn't you just have lunch? Or, like, won't that ruin your appetite? I mean, just these kinds of comments that I'm now able to speak to my family about and say those kinds of comments to me say you don't trust me to make my own choices for my own body and life. I'd appreciate it if you could work on that, and if you can't, at least just shut up about it when I'm around, or I might stop coming around, because that's one of the great things about being an adult is that we're often allowed to create the kinds of spaces that we feel safe in. I think, though, that the kinds of things that are possibly harder to avoid that have been on my mind more lately are the kinds of body policing that we are kind of like we're standing by for, or we're like an unintended consequence of. So, like, for me in my work, I've stopped. I choose not to go. In New Zealand, there's a morning tea culture where at 10 a.m. every day, pretty much the whole country stops working to have morning tea. It's very cool. It's this. It's a very different kind of way of life. I mean, they definitely don't live to work here. And so really the whole country kind of shuts down to have morning tea. And so in my particular work area and other work areas, that's what you'll find people doing at 10 a.m. They'll be in the staff room having a cup of tea, maybe having, some kind of muffin or fruit or something. And I've learned very quickly to not participate in those kinds of activities because of the amount of kind of like food shaming and food policing and body shaming and stuff and the fat talk that occurs in those settings. And so even if I'm not part of the conversation, but I'm sitting within earshot or sitting next to individuals, often women, who are commenting about how bad they feel because they had dessert last night, or passing on the muffins that somebody brought because, oh no, I couldn't, I shouldn't, I just and I think that we don't necessarily think about that, especially when we're engaging in that kind of talk ourselves. We don't think about how powerful that is. We don't think about the unspoken kind of culture that creates around how all people around us, live in our own bodies and feel about the choices that we make. And of course, I would assume most of the people in those staff rooms, in my staff room, they don't think about it either. They just nod along, right? Because everybody knows that, oh yeah, shouldn't have the chocolate muffin because that's, not good for you, and that's a poor food choice, and therefore you're like the worst person ever. And yeah, so I think for me, when I think about body policing, don't get me wrong, I spent a lot of years thinking about how I have been directly body policed, but these days I think more and more about how, we're indirectly body policed and the kind of culture that we reinforce through the conversations we have with others, even when we're not meaning to be oppressing, and yet we still are, because, well, partly probably because we don't know any better.
Yeah, what you're talking about reminds me of one of the topics we have on our pop culture list, a good transition into another way that we kind of encourage body policing is through like pop culture and media and social media, specifically like the Renee Zellweger incidents of last week that wasn't really an incident at all, but like she made a speech at a women's, like honoring a women's dinner, and it just kind of went crazy. So I would love your guys' opinion on that whole, and I'm assuming we all know what I'm talking about, of people having strong opinions about how she looked compared to how she looked several years ago. What was your guys' take on that?
I won't lie, I was a little taken aback by it when I first saw it, just because she does look different. Like, if I had passed her on the street, I would never know that was Renee Zellweger, but at the same time, she was, you know, going around saying, well, I'm glad people notice that I look different. Like, I'm happy now, and like what you're seeing on my face is happy. I'm like, well, that's cool. So I'm done with this conversation now about Renee Zellweger's face. She's happy, and really that's all that matters, because it's her face. It doesn't affect my life. She didn't do anything horrible to herself, or maybe she did, and I don't know. But again, not my business, not my place. But yeah, it was really interesting to see people just like explode over it. I don't care. Why is this a big deal? I'm really hot now. This chili is making me hot.
If she hadn't put out a statement afterwards, do you think your opinion would have stayed the same? Is it because she kind of was like, "It's okay, everyone, don't worry about it"? Is that like what made everyone feel better? If she hadn't, would everyone have continued to have concern?
I think a lot of people probably would have, yeah. But I mean, if she hadn't said anything, again, it's like it's her face, it's her body. She can do whatever she wants, and it doesn't affect my life. And it's not. I mean, she did it for a reason, and I have no place or say in that reason. So, you know, moving on. Take it for grain of salt for what it's worth, and, you know, whatever. Not my place. But I will admit, it took me a long time to get to that point, especially with celebrities, because they're so in our faces to be like, it is not my place to say anything about them, because if I were in their shoes, I sure as hell wouldn't want everybody to be like scrutinizing over whatever I may have done or did not do to my body, my appearance. So, you know, I'm just trying to treat them with the respect that I would want to be treated with, that I do want to be treated with every day.
Yeah, I think unfortunately our culture definitely promotes having our opinions, you know, kind of be shared widely, and of course, you know, the snarkier the better. And I think that we see that especially in a 24-hour news cycle, and through the way that social media connects us all in different ways than we used to be able to be connected. And so the goings on of celebrities, including what they look like, have they lost weight, have they gained weight, who are they sleeping with, you know, which country have they adopted a baby from now? I mean, unfortunately, all of those things will continue to be interesting topics that people want to talk about, that people want to comment upon. You know, but I think that it definitely could provide. I think that it also, the unfortunate side of it is that it happens, and of course we know that this is a gendered phenomenon, you know, so we care much more about what women look like, the choices that women celebrities make with their bodies, than, you know, we do about with men. And I think that there's also a huge size aspect to it as well. So Renee Zellweger has had a long kind of history in terms of her body size, her head size, gaining weight for roles, losing weight for roles, you know, being comfortable in her own body. Luckily, these things do then provide us with a jumping off point in terms of having conversations around, why does it matter? Why do we spend so much time on this? You know, is this helping, again, to continue to divert us from real and meaningful conversations that we should be having, whether it's about bodies and autonomy, or, you know, what's going on in other parts of the world that are affecting a lot more people than whether or not you like her new face. I mean,
Yeah. What do you think, Dawn? You're out there in Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a little distracted here because our fifth member, Dion Benson Smith, is herself somewhere. So we're trying to loop her in to this one. So I'm doing two things at once here. But yeah, I mean, you know, the thing about Hollywood is that it is perfectly accepted and considered the norm to feel free to police women's bodies in any shape or form. I mean, essentially every job posting, which is what an audition notice is, essentially every job posting in Hollywood body polices, because they don't just want, you know, a woman to play a mother. They want a woman 30 to 35 with brunette or dark blonde hair, slim build, blue eyes. So it's sort of the norm. I mean, imagine if you were applying for an accounting position and the accounting job posting said full service accountant needed to handle QuickBooks, needs to be 30 to 35 years old, 5'6", with brunette hair and blue eyes. You know, that would be illegal in every other field in the world. But the media, the one that is in our face all day, every day, the one that has an incredible amount of influence over the way that we view ourselves on a day-to-day basis, that entire industry body polices as a matter of course. Mm-hmm. So I must admit that I often despair out here in La La Land about the messages that we are sending out and reinforcing to women around the globe about what they are supposed to do. You know, what Kat was talking about, those sort of constant background noise of, well, I should be skinnier, and I should be quieter, and I should care about my man more, and I should want to have children, and I should be fulfilled by this incredibly narrow band of roles that that the Hollywood machine has defined as where women live, and it's bullshit, frankly, and it gets really exhausting. It gets really exhausting out here, but it's also the place where hopefully we can do the most good. So. So that's why I'm here.
That's why you're here. What made you decide to move out to LA? Was that ever a concern for you when you decided to move?
You know, it's funny. I had sort of a vague idea that it might be an issue, but I think we're here.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Finish your thought, Dawn, and then we'll join Dion in.
Okay. I had, I thought that I might have more work to do here, because when I was creating women's theater in Chicago, you know, it felt like I was doing good work, but it felt like I made a difference. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, it might be a little harder out there because LA's bigger. But then I got out here and I found out that LA, that not only did I move distance, but I think I moved back in time, because LA is like the 50s. I mean, the racism and the sexism out here is mind-boggling. And so I don't, if I'd known that, I don't know if I would have been as eager to get out here. But I'm I don't know. From the time I was a kid, the impossible challenges have always been the ones that have appealed to me the most. So who knows? I might have thrown myself against this wall even if I'd known what I was getting myself into.
Amazing. Dion, am I pronouncing your name right, first of all?
Yes, you are. You are.
Dion, can you just introduce yourself? Can you tell us where you're from? Are you eating dinner? Do you have?
I was eating dinner. I was rushing around.
before, and then maybe tell
Okay.
us a little bit about yourself and what you do and what you're passionate about.
Sure, sure. So I was eating, I had very quickly, and then I kind of threw my kids out the door with my mother. Gluten-free mushu pork. So I can show you the carton in a minute. I warmed it up in the microwave. I'm not that great of a cook. So, and my favorite thing right now, I love peanut M&Ms, and so I kind of a nice little bowl of peanut M&Ms to cap off my dinner. It's my guilty pleasure, and I don't share them with anybody. Which I have 3 children, so the not sharing thing is become a big deal. But it makes it more of a guilty pleasure too. That they're all mine. So
Nice.
that's my dessert, and it's all mine.
Yeah, dessert.
Yes, it's dessert, and I deserve it. So so that's what I ate. And what do? I live right now. I am living in what's called the Inland Valley in Southern California, kind of in this no man's land between Claremont and Pomona, California. So I live in Pomona, and I'm a new import to California. We've been here roughly going on 4 years to Southern California, so this is not my native area. None of us were born here. I was born on the East Coast and raised on the East Coast in Philadelphia. And then most recently, I've lived all over. I lived in Chicago, but most recently we moved from Iowa, and we moved here. I took a teaching position here. I was a faculty member at Grinnell College, where I taught political science, and we moved here for the diversity, because I have this sort of transnational, biracial family. My spouse is from Russia, so my kids are not the typical sort of Iowan cast, and our family did not really fit in we lived in a town of about 9,000, and it didn't really work out very well for our family, so we moved out here to be in a bigger space. And right now I am adjuncting at Claremont Graduate University, where I'm happily teaching gender and politics and race and politics. And so I've moved out of the strict public policy, political science, and that was also why I left too, so that I can start to pursue the things that I'm more passionate about, which are gender and race and women's studies, and not the very conservative, straight-laced political science.
How does
types of things.
how does kind of our topic of body autonomy and body policing kind of weave itself into the work you're doing with your students?
I do a lot of work right now in reproductive health, reproductive justice, and I've always done from the very beginnings, even in political science, my work has always focused on African American women in the United States. And so I did a lot of early work on African American women and Black motherhood. And so body autonomy and body policing really focuses and weaves its way into a whole host of questions that I ask, from how women, a whole host of questions from how we present ourselves as women of color and how we situate ourselves as women of color as sexual beings, vis-a-vis a mainstream culture that really has a very narrow approach. So these kind of archetypes of African American women as Mammy or Jezebel, and how these things tend to then work their way into how we see ourselves culturally, how that works its way into political speech, public policies like welfare policies, and how they then police women's activities, women's sexual activities, motherhood, and really work to constrain. We also talk in what I teach in terms of reproductive health and reproductive policies, how body autonomy and the policing the body work in ways that, and I'm trying to figure out how to say this in an elevator pitch so I don't take up too much time. This is where I'm like, if I seem tongue-tied, because I'm like, huh. So how do images and constructions of the female body, particularly female sexuality or black female sexuality, work in ways that criminalize certain types of behaviors,
Right.
particularly black women's behavior, sexual autonomy, right? So if I express myself, and I'm expressing myself freely, what does that mean vis-a-vis, if you ask certain things like slut shaming, right? And if you think about the current backlash and or conversations and discourse around slut walk, right? That has very different meanings for different communities, right? And slut shaming has different meanings for different communities, and there has a historical connotation for black women that goes very, very deep in terms of what types of autonomy we are allowed vis-a-vis our own bodies, with respect to birth control, with respect to making decisions, and I'm talking about with reproductive justice issues, with respect to making decisions. Birth control is this one thing that was always considered to be this kind of freeing moment, right? You have the pill, and it frees yourself, and it frees us to then be more autonomous in our sexual selves. But this is also this moment for black women that became much more constricting, right? And it is a conflicting history, right? So these questions of what we think are autonomous and what creates body autonomy and how we interact with that, with institutions of power, really are wrapped up with race, sexuality, heteronormativity, class. And so these are the things that we explore in my classes. And I try to explore in my research. I hope I did that.
Oh, you did.
Way that opened up a space.
What I think you also just commented on is what we were talking about at the beginning of all the subjects we've done so far. Like this one feels like we could dig in and talk for hours and hours and could go in so many different directions.
Yeah.
But I really thank you for chiming in, because your voice is welcomed to the conversation.
Thank you.
What we were starting to do, though, was to dig into just some kind of like recent pop culture that kind of reflect and comment on the subject matter. And so we touched on Miss Zellweger's face when you were coming in. Yeah, and I'm curious about you guys. Did you guys see the video that was released yesterday, the 10 hours of walking in NYC as a woman?
Yes.
Yep.
Did everybody get a chance to see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. Can we talk about it a little bit, Ellen?
Yeah, we'll talk about it, and you could even, if you wanted to mute your and go find it. If you did 10 hours of walking in NYC as a woman, and just kind of the cat call culture and how that relates to body autonomy, and I'm curious your thoughts on that subject matter. Women of the world.
I'm gonna find that and post it on our Facebook page.
Love it. I can go because I have opinions.
Do it.
So, yeah, I saw it, and it took me a long time to watch it because I knew what it was going to be, and I didn't necessarily, like, I immediately knew what it was going to be. It was just going to be her kind of walking and getting salacious things said to her, which is a common occurrence for myself in the city of Chicago. In fact, I have a short play about it. So it's something that I just find so resonating. But the thing that I started, and what eventually made me watch it, is I started to pick up on the conversations being had about the video the commentary on it and the feedback on like, oh, but she's not being harassed. Those are compliments. They're just saying hello to her. Is where I really started to get angry, and then I had to watch the video to be like, what do they mean? How is she not being harassed? And then of course I watched it and was infuriated because of course she's being harassed. So that was my experience, but I find that whole subject of autonomy, of when you are just trying to be yourself on the street and you can't get people to leave you alone.
I had a similar experience watching the video because I saw people were posting it a couple of days ago, and I was like, nope, I know what's on there. I don't want to watch that. And the same thing, like I started seeing comments about it. There was a WGN News, morning news out here, actually posted it on their Facebook page, and people I didn't know were saying the same thing. Oh, they're compliments. Why is this a bad thing? Like, oh, she's being really rude, not saying anything to them, and blah, blah, blah. So I started watching it. I watched it today, and I was like, yep, that's me. I've been there. I've had that situation. And I think the thing about the compliments that they don't understand why it's a problem is, if I'm walking down the street and a guy says, "Hi, miss, I hope you're having a nice day," I'm kind of damned if I do and damned if I don't. If I say, "Oh, thank you, you too," and keep walking, that he might think that's an invitation to run up and keep talking to me, when this is not what I want to do. I thought we were just, exchanging pleasantries for the day. Stranger that I don't know on the street. But if I don't say anything, I'm cold, I'm rude, I'm a bitch, can't you take a compliment, fucking smile at me, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, and watching that video, I was I guess it wasn't really surprising to me that so many people were having that same reaction with her, like telling her to smile and oh sweetie, have a nice day. Well, you're not going to say it back. And but the thing about that video that really creeped me out was the one guy who said something like, "Oh, I hope you're having a nice day," and then walked alongside her for 5 full minutes, not saying anything and just occasionally looking over at her. Like, that made me nauseous. I was like, it was so uncomfortable and creepy, and he probably has no idea that a simple action of walking down the street next to a woman that he doesn't know, could make her feel unsafe and make the people around her feel unsafe. Like, there was even a moment where she had a look on her face like, is this guy going to attack me? Is today the day that I'm going to get attacked by a stranger? And that's, yeah, so
yeah,
I think it's just...
It's the whole predator-prey phenomenon. It's that women are taught from the very beginning. I don't know how many self-defense seminars I sat in when I was going through school about what not to do to put yourself in a position where someone can hurt you. So we, through instinct or through training or both, we understand that when we are in public spaces, we are prey. And when men comment on what we should be doing with ourselves, and yeah, that moment where he's walking alongside her is stunning, because the look on her face it was a moment of such recognition for me. Like, I saw the look on her face and I was like, oh God, yeah, I know that feeling. I have felt that feeling on a regular basis. But it comes back to the whole smile thing, is that it seems that certain people are incapable of understanding that just because I have a vagina, I do not owe you my time or my attention. I owe you nothing. So if you want to say something to me, that's fine, but I do not owe you a reply. And if I don't reply, too bad for you. It's not my problem. It is not my problem. I do not owe you my time or my attention just because I am female.
And I was going to ask you, I didn't see the video, but I've been thinking about this a lot lately, because I've seen, similar conversations around catcalling. And what you were saying, I've been thinking about how this extends beyond just walking in the street, right? And I remember my mother telling me, my mother worked all through raising us. And one time, and she worked for IBM, and she got a really, really bad review one time. And what her manager put on her review was that she didn't smile enough. You know, she was very competent, and he actually wrote extraordinarily competent worker, wonderfully skilled. And I remember her being really upset about this because but she just doesn't seem happy, and she doesn't smile enough. And it made me think about, reading a lot of comments about catcalling, what you're talking about. Just because I have a vagina, I don't owe you a smile. That this idea that because I'm a woman and I'm in a public space, right, I owe you warmth. I owe you, hey, whenever I see that, hey, why don't you smile, right? Smile, it's not that bad. Or, for me, I'm at a library, and I'm leaned over, and I'm thinking about something, and I happen to be kind of, looking like I'm thinking, and I've had that happen to me. It's like, hey, it's not that bad. Why don't you smile? And I'm thinking, what the fuck? I'm sitting here. I have a data set in front of me. What am I? Oh, okay. I'm going to smile now. But we are taught and we are told, right, every time in a public space, I owe you warmth. I owe you bubbly feelings, right? I'm supposed to say things with a smile. I'm supposed to go up to my doctor, right, when I'm having a conversation with my doctor about something, a life-threatening disease. But it's really, really nice if I say it nicely, right? Be a little nicer. And it extends. I mean, it's really interesting to me when I hear even people, or particularly men, who think that they are not like the men who catcall, right? Oh, well, I don't do that. But they do engage in the other forms of behavior where it's like, oh, well, why are you so aggressive, right? Can you be a little softer when you say things? And to me, there is a continuum in terms of the expectations that you're placing, like what you were saying, on my behavior. You have decided that I have a certain script, and this is the behavior that I need to engage in the public space. And you're telling me now, smile, be nicer, be softer for me, be the kind of woman I want you to be for me today. So I don't know. That was just,
yeah.
It's funny that you say say all that, because I have a couple of friends who all of us share a severe resting bitch face when we're riding the train, public transit, and we have all on our own time been approached and been like, "What's wrong?" Or, "Are you okay, miss? You look angry." And we decided we were going to form a little gang of resting bitch face together and go around, just let people ask us when something's wrong. But I remember once I was going to whatever job I had at the time, and I was riding the train with this older man, and I recognized him, and he came into the store that I worked at, and he was like, "Hey, do you have bookends?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, the bookends are over that way." And he was like, "Oh, thank you." And then he took 3 steps, turned around, came back to me, and was like, "I saw you on the train, and girl, you looked mean." I was like, I don't know why you would come back to tell me that when I was being nice with you, and go get your bookends.
Right. Go get your bookends. I'm curious, Kat, because you're in New Zealand. Is this an American thing? Or is it a phenomenon that happens in New Zealand, or is this?
I don't think it's unique to the United States. I think that women around the world, possibly more in Western cultures, experience this insistence, that we be nice, that we smile. I think that it fits in nicely actually with our topic of body autonomy in terms of the performances that we expect from people and the ways in which they're gendered, and then of course the ways that we regulate and monitor that in other people. And we see this in children as well. I've been coming across quite a few really great pieces from both blogs and also I think Everyday Feminism had a great piece the other day about the kinds of performances that we expect from children. And like one of the pieces I just read was great, and it was about I'm not going to make my daughter hug you. And it was kind of this idea of, like we expect children to perform in very similar ways as women, right? Because we do infantilize women in that way. To always be happy, to always be cheerful, to always be glad to see each other. And this particular piece was about a mother writing about how when strangers, like coworkers and friends, meet her daughter, they immediately want to give her a hug and be like, oh, you're just so da-da-da. And her daughter doesn't like that. And she's trying to promote in her daughter a sense of body autonomy, a sense of body respect, an idea that simply because other people want to touch you, that doesn't mean you have to let them. But of course she gets all kinds of backlash from friends and family and coworkers who tell her she's being ridiculous and what's the big deal. And it reminds me, we were talking about pop culture earlier when I can't remember the daughter's name, Will and Jaden Pinkett Smith's daughter.
Willow.
Apparently Willow, right. So if I remember correctly, a couple years ago there was this big hubbub in the news media because they made a comment about how they let her cut her own hair. And it was important to them to instill in her that her hair is her own, that she can do with it as she wants, that she doesn't have to, make it the way they think it should be or anyone else. And it became this huge thing of why would you give your child this kind of responsibility and, what kind of loosey-goosey pair. And of course, that, like anything else, there's a lot of intersectionality in it. That is obviously charged with issues not only of gender but also of race and ethnicity. But it, again, stems along that same topic, I guess, if you will, of body autonomy.
Yes. I totally agree. Oh, I love it. Are there any other comments on catcall? Because I have one more topic I'm curious.
Well, I was wondering, I was questioning with catcall, because when we were talking about this, I realized that growing up in West Philadelphia, West End, North Philadelphia, I remember catcalls happening all the time. But then maybe it's because of where I lived in the Midwest, it's not something that I see happening a lot in smaller towns or smaller areas, like in the Midwest, or when we moved to Indianapolis, when I was in high school. It was not a phenomenon that I remember experiencing. I do remember experiencing people making comments, but they were much more comments about my height and the fact that I didn't fit gender norms at that time. Because, you can't see it. I'm 6'3".
Awesome.
So, and I played basketball. And so the biggest thing that happens to me is that I get the, do you play basketball? And, the kind of comments, I get very weird things happening with short men coming up measuring themselves next to me.
Oh my God.
Yes. Bizarre, very, very bizarre, like, oh my God, and saying very weird sexual things too. Like, I can't even imagine like how it would be to have sex with you. And again, because my husband is white and he's Russian, and it's very bad moments. It's not as bad as anymore because then it's that weird not assuming that I'm with a person because the intersection of the race thing. But that's what I see more of, like these kind of side-swiping comments that men make to women. And I don't know if like the catcalling is a spatial issue that happens in cities more because of an assumption of anonymity, right? Whereas in suburban enclaves or small towns, you know you're going to see a person again, so you have it's not catcalling per se, but there is still an invasion of space with regard to gender, but I call it more of a sidewinding comment. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts, having grown, maybe you grew up in a different area or you've experienced it differently.
Yeah, what that makes me think of is also looking at like our personal communities, environments, like as small towns, right? And how even there's still like the in those passive comments of like calling me sunshine or sweetheart, or like who are these older men who I have interactions with a lot because I'm one of the youngest people they interact with in the day. I still become sweetheart or young person. That happens a lot, like hello young person, and that as I've gotten older, I have become more resistant to it. But when I was younger, it didn't even faze me, like when men I knew kind of used that kind of language. Not salacious tone, but certainly charged with undertones of the cute young one.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, speaking of sort of growing up in spaces, I grew up in New England, and in a very sort of Puritan influenced culture. And so I think to a certain extent I may have been trained from youth to accept body policing, because that was such an aspect of the culture there, that other people's behavior was your responsibility. That sort of Puritan shaming culture is still very prevalent in New England, and in some ways it works to the benefit of the community, because it helps to reinforce things like common politeness. So if someone's being just unnecessarily rude, then everyone around feels themselves perfectly within their rights to shame that person into better behavior. But it did also mean that, I was taught the way that a lady was supposed to comport herself. And if I was not, comporting myself in a way that was appropriate for a young lady, that anyone in the supermarket felt perfectly justified in correcting my behavior. So I do think that there is some. There's definitely, your cultural heritage will affect the way that you accept that body policing.
Yeah. Good stuff. We're actually at the end of our hour, which I can't believe.
That went by fast.
And so we won't go into our final topic, but I do just want to plant the seed. And that was going to be about Brittany Maynard and her right to die with dignity at 29. So the idea of body autonomy and having control of your right to end your life or not. So, but I think maybe we'll save that for another one.
Oh my God, yeah, we could do at least another panel.
And really, maybe we should. Maybe
we will. Maybe we will.
Another body autonomy episode, because I really think there's so many topics and areas, sexual health, reproductive health, that we could go into.
Yeah, that Dion was talking about when she did her introduction about the intersection of race and economics with body autonomy, because I mean we could do a whole panel on how like what you were talking about with the pill, Dion, and you were saying about how for one group of people it was seen as this great boon that they could control their reproduction, but it also for another group of people becomes this blunt weapon,
right,
to beat,
utilized by the state to
that the same thing can be both an advantage and a disadvantage depending on the community that you're in and the way that society views what those communities' responsibilities are. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
So much to say.
Well, in our last little moment, I would love if anybody has anything to pitch, anything they're promoting, just a little what's coming up for you. Let's just do a final little pitch, and then we'll say goodbye. Who would like to start?
Well, I'll start. I don't have a pitch. I am currently in the middle of a wonderful project on, speaking of body autonomy, looking at African American women and Latina women and how they negotiate with their doctors on non-life-threatening reproductive surgeries, like negotiating not having hysterectomies and alternatives to hysterectomies. So agency and reproductive health. So I'm excited about it, and hopefully you can look for some articles coming from that within the next year and a half.
Awesome.
Cool.
Who else?
Kat, how about you?
Oh, who? Who done?
Kat? You want to tell us what you're about?
Yeah, so for me, I had a text get published, an edited text published by Ashgate earlier in the year. And in fact, I've got it on my desk, so I'll just hold it up and be like, yay! And we've been doing a social media book tour for it. So we are wrapping that down. It's coming to a close at the end of November. But it's been really cool. We've had spots on blogs and online magazines like the Huffington Post, and it's just been a really worthwhile engagement, and I would encourage, other academics and writers to think about using social media in that way to promote the work that they're doing. I'm getting excited to come stateside for the holidays. Yay! It's just, here, because we're on the other side of the equator, it's summer here at Christmas time, and that just doesn't quite fit with me very well. So I always look forward to coming back to the States. And actually this year I'm doing an East Coast Christmas. I'm going to be in Chicago for the first time for part of it. So excited to see what kinds of things I can do while I'm there, and happy to get tips from you guys maybe later on through email. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what's on top for me at the moment.
Morgan, how about you?
I'm auditioning for things at the moment and getting ready for the holidays as well. But I've also been off and on writing a two-woman play about these topics about body positivity and autonomy and all that. And actually got some ideas for some more scenes while having this conversation. So send me good thoughts that I actually write it and can get people to listen to it, because that's my main thing at the moment.
You and I should connect. We should.
Yes, we like this.
There you
Not like this.
Nope.
That's the way.
Body autonomy. Do it.
that, it's your body.
I am ridiculous, and I apologize.
Don, what are you working on?
Right now, I'm working on trying to get the last pieces put together of a film competition that my film company Vicarious Films is sponsoring, and it is on the topic of predator-prey and the women's experience with feeling like prey in public spaces. And the other thing that I'm doing is has nothing to do with anything except puppies. This is my foster dog right down here.
Oh!
And she has behavioral issues, so I am actually running a personal fundraising campaign right now, since the foster agency cannot pay for her training, to pay for some intensive one-on-one training so that she can hopefully overcome her dog aggression and be in a place where she can find a permanent home. So that's my personal crusade right now.
Awesome.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
I am currently working on a new play for young people that looks at princess culture and investigating kind of cultural identity, body image identity, gender identity for young people and exploring that through the lens of kind of Disney and media. And so creating that play now, and it'll be with Adventure Stage Chicago in the spring. But I'm very excited about it, and it's a whole lot of fun, as well as just making some sweet art with Knife and Fork here in Chicago. Well, ladies, we've done it.
Woohoo!
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys are
Sorry I was
awesome.
late.
Spread the news. It probably won't be quite live until tomorrow, but please spread it. This was an awesome talk, and I really think lots of people should hear your awesome voice on this subject. So thanks again, and we'll be back next month. What's next month, Dawn? I forgot. I'm sorry.
It's our cultural backgrounds with food. We're going to be talking about food and family.
Oh,
and
yes.
for our Thanksgiving issue. We're going to be talking about food and family. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, ladies, let's wave goodbye.
Bye.
Be free into the night.